Day morning meditation on behalf of offered by the Insight Meditation Community of Washington, IMCW, and Center for Mindful Living, which is part of IMCW and has a very vigorous and kind of wonderful life. Going back to pre-pandemic, we had a center in Tenley Town, but obviously with the pandemic had to let that go. But it's been very, very active online and now in person as well. So we'll share a little bit about upcoming Center for Mindful Living offerings towards the end. And I'm Hugh Byrne. I've been teaching on Sunday mornings going back to 2000. I think, Heather, you were there early on, and others kind of back in Woodley Park and then Tenley Town and online. And anyway, it's lovely to be here. I used to teach every week, but then kind of found it was wiser to teach, share that with others, and to have a kind of little bit more space to, with other commitments and demands to. So I normally teach the first and third Sundays. Sometimes changes with retreats or with being out of town, but pretty much the first and third. And Regina typically teaches the fourth, and then we have a guest teacher or a sangha-led session. So. Really happy to be with everyone today. If you are new, thank you, Achala. Thank you. If you are new, please feel free to put your name and where you're joining us from in the chat, in the comments, and we'll welcome you, and welcome back everyone who's come before. Just to share a little bit about the format of the class, it kind of changes a little bit around the format, but we typically begin with a meditation, and then we have a talk on a theme of the Dharma, the teachings, Buddhist teachings, practices. And then Emily leads us in some mindful movement, which is always lovely to kind of get into our bodies in an active way and move a little bit and bring mindfulness to the body in movement. And then we'll have a little bit of time to share, maybe questions or just sharing things that have come up for people. We finish the session by 12, and most weeks we keep the room open, as it were, for at least half an hour or so for people to share informally. Sometimes the teacher will continue with small groups, but anyone who wants to, obviously you can log off at any time, but if people need to finish by 12 and get on with their day, then, that we formally finish then, and then we may sometimes do some continuing of the discussion or some small groups. Today, just want to let you know, I have to leave promptly. I have a memorial service down in Washington for a dear friend who passed just a few weeks ago, and I'm going to be heading down for that kind of pretty promptly at 12 or just after 12. So we may continue and just keep it open for discussion afterwards if people would like to, but just to let you know about that format. So just looking at the chat here, Cecilia, first time in a while from Bethesda. Great to see you. Happy to be here. Yes, happy to have you here. And Anne from Cumberland, Maryland. Great to have you here. And anyone else, please feel free to share. And please feel free to use the chat if anything comes up for you. Welcome those just joining us now. The theme I want to explore today is the Buddha's heart practices. And this is a very kind of wide-ranging area. So I just want to kind of touch on some key areas of the practices of loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. They're called the four heart practices. And just today, focus on a couple of important things I want to get across about these teachings and the role they play within the Buddhist teachings, practices, within the tradition. And welcome to Donna from Silver Spring, first time on a Sunday morning, but join regularly during the week. Great to have you here on Sunday morning, Donna, and warm welcome to you. So that's what I'll be talking about today, and kind of inviting us to cultivate some of these heart practices of opening our hearts. Something I'm, is very close to my own heart, are these teachings and practices of loving kindness and compassion and the other qualities. So what I'd actually like to do today to begin with a practice of loving kindness. It'll be relatively short, and the practice of loving kindness you could do, over a period of a day or a week or longer, where you cultivate kindness for yourself, for friends, loved ones, benefactors, and then out to neutral people, and then out to include difficult people, challenging people in our lives, and ultimately to include everybody, all beings, even all beings and all experiences. And today we'll just kind of touch on it, and the beginnings of that, and explore it more perhaps in weeks to come. But we'll start with a loving kindness practice, and what I invite you to do is just find a comfortable and relaxed posture. We'll sit probably for 20 minutes or so. So find a posture in which you can be comfortable, relaxed. For most people, it'll be sitting down. It might be lying down, reclining. Sometimes people join us walking along or, taking a walk. So whatever your posture is, let your attention come into the body. If you're comfortable, you might let your eyes gently close and drop your attention into the body. So letting yourself settle and arrive. You might take some moments to consciously relax your body. Relaxing the muscles around the eyes and the forehead, and the facial muscles, the chin, and the mouth. Just by bringing awareness to an area that can be a natural relaxing, a softening. So just letting the muscles soften as much as possible. Coming down into the shoulders where we often hold a lot of tension. Just inviting the shoulders to relax. You might imagine you're putting down a heavy pack that you've been carrying. Just letting yourself, that feeling of ease, not having to carry a weight on your shoulders. And then coming down into the body, into the torso and the chest and the belly, where we often hold tension. We clench our muscles, we tighten up. So just inviting the belly to be open, relaxed. Letting the breath come into a relaxed, open belly. Relaxing the hands, the lower body, legs and the feet, abdomen. And you might let your breath deepen a little, take a few longer, deeper breaths as a way of helping you really more fully arrive and settle. Nice, full, deep in-breath. And a long, slow out-breath, letting go, releasing. Imagine you're breathing out any stresses and strains and worries you might be holding, just letting them go as much as you can. Breathing in, calming the body. Breathing out, calming the mind. If there's anything that's difficult or challenging for you right now, something you're worried about or a bit stressed about, you might put your hand on your heart, maybe the other hand on your belly, and just connect with yourself, just letting yourself relax and be here. When we're stressed or worried, it's always about something that might happen in the future. And we can just invite ourselves to be with this moment, this breath. What's here right now? If we let go of the story about the future or the past or what's going on elsewhere, and just open to what's present here. Maybe some tightness, some squeezing, tension. Just making space for whatever is here, meeting it with kindness, with care. Whatever's present, see if you can meet it with kindness, with friendliness. Inviting an attitude of friendliness, of care, kindness to whatever you're experiencing. And letting bodily sensations that you might come into awareness, letting them come, letting them be, letting them go. So just bringing a kind of an observant awareness to whatever's coming up without grabbing onto it or pushing it away, just letting things come and go. If thoughts come up, when you see them, just let the thought go. Know that you can choose. You could either fuel them, get into the story, or you could just see them and let them go. Let them come, let them be, let them go. Whatever comes up, whatever is present, just making space for it, letting it come, letting it go. And as we get into this loving kindness practice, you might just take a moment to reflect on your current experience, your life right now. Just reflect on what's kind of anything that stands out. There may be something difficult going on that you're working with, or you might be feeling happy or joyful about an event or something in your life, or somewhere in between. So whatever is present, whatever the kind of the tone or the flavor of your experience, just hold that with kindness. The Buddha said, what you frequently think about and ponder on becomes the inclination of your mind. What you frequently think about and ponder on becomes the inclination of your mind. So if you think anxious, worried thoughts, fearful thoughts, or angry thoughts, that's what really colors your mind. That's the kind of habit energy you create in the body and the mind. So we have a choice of what we're going to cultivate, of how we're going to incline our minds. So in this practice, we consciously incline our mind towards friendliness, kindness to ourselves and outward to all beings, really into all experiences. Just letting the wishes go outward. So this is kind of what we're cultivating in loving kindness, an inclination of the mind, an intentional friendliness, kindness. So it's helpful to begin with ourselves, because if we're kind of closed to ourselves, if we're judging or angry with ourselves, it's very hard to be open and connected with others. So just beginning with ourselves. We could use certain phrases, the traditional phrases that we can use, and we can adapt them. And I'll just share a few and just see how they resonate with you. And if they don't work for you, can always adapt them or change them, or just stay with the experience without the words, however you feel is most helpful. May I be safe and free from harm. You might breathe in a wish, an intention for yourself, that you be safe, free from mental and physical harm. May I be happy. We all want to be happy, but we don't always go about becoming happy, doing the things that will actually make us happy. So wishing for ourselves, may I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be peaceful. We all know how painful it can be to be caught up in worry and stress and fear. So just that wish for ourselves, may I be peaceful. May I live with ease and with kindness. May I live with ease and with kindness. So, if you can, let each phrase rest in your heart, letting the words go deep, offering yourself wishes of well-being and peace. And not to look for any particular feelings, but open to whatever comes up. Sometimes it might be the opposite of friendliness, of kindness. It might be annoyance or frustration. See if you can make space to meet that too, with kindness, with friendliness. So that it's not so important that you're feeling kind, but you're intending, you're committing to kindness. So may I be safe and free from harm. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I live with ease and with kindness. See if you can connect with the wish for yourself, that you be happy and safe and peaceful, or whatever your wish, your deepest wish for yourself is. You can silently repeat these phrases or your own phrases, but just resting in that intention, the commitment to kindness, to friendliness, loving kindness to yourself. If you can bring kindness and friendliness to all the bodily experiences, the aches and pains, the tiredness, the excitement, the feeling of ease, whatever is present, see if you can hold it with kindness. In all of the mental states, the mind states, calm, maybe stress, clarity, as well as confusion, tension, ease, all of the different states of mind that come up. Can you hold them all with kindness and with friendliness? All of the emotions and heart qualities, joy and sorrow, anger, peace, worry, happiness. If you can meet them all with kindness and friendliness. Just wishing yourself well. Inviting a wish of kindness and friendliness for yourself. May I be safe, free from harm. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I live with ease and with kindness. You might, if you feel ready, and you can just focus wherever you wish to. You don't have to move on if you're not ready to do that. But if you feel ready, just for the time we have here, to kind of broaden your inclination of the mind, broaden your intention to take in somebody who's dear to you, somebody who's easy for you to feel friendly and kind towards. Let them come into your consciousness, into your awareness. You might imagine that you're sitting facing each other, looking in each other's eyes, and recognize that this being, this person, like you, wants to be happy and safe and peaceful. And just let your wishes of kindness go out to them. May you be safe, free from harm. May you be happy, truly happy. May you be peaceful. May you live with ease and with kindness. Or however, whatever way it feels most helpful to you, maybe just focusing on that individual, or perhaps bringing in other loved ones that you wish well towards. Just letting your heart be as open as it can be right now, sending out wishes of kindness and friendliness to this being or beings. May you be happy, may you be safe, happy, peaceful. May you live with ease and with kindness. And I just continue to cultivate this commitment of the heart to friendliness, to yourself and to others. It's like you're putting fuel on the fire to to help these qualities of the heart to go deeper and go further. Just in the few remaining minutes, you might go out further to include whoever you feel you'd like to send friendliness and kindness towards. You might send a wish out to everyone who's here, all of us here together, practicing together, all of us in our own ways committed to waking up, to living free of suffering. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you live with ease and with kindness. Just letting your wishes go out, maybe to include those who are suffering from the tragedies in recent days in Libya, Morocco. People living in conflict and war. People living with inner turmoil, emotional suffering. Just letting your wishes, your intentions of kindness and friendliness go out. Go out towards all beings. Letting your wishes, your intentions go out to include everyone, all beings everywhere, without exception. If you can, just having that intention, that commitment of the heart. You can direct the practice wherever you feel it's most helpful. It might include a beloved Sangha member who's lost a parent in recent days. My friend Janet, who died a few weeks ago. Maybe others in your life. Just holding the joys and the sorrows of life in your heart. Cultivating this quality of friendliness to all beings and all experiences. And know that you can practice this in your own way at any time, really. You could practice it on a train or a bus or a plane, just wishing everyone well. Or just out for a walk, or just letting the wishes go out. The most important thing is we're cultivating a heart that's open, that's friendly and kind and caring. We'll finish with this poem by Muhyiddin ibn al-Arabi. There was a time I would reject those who were not of my faith, but now my heart has grown capable of taking on all forms. It's a pasture for gazelles, an abbey for monks, a table for the Torah, Kaaba for the pilgrim. My religion is love. Whichever the route love's caravan shall take, that shall be the path of my faith. My religion is love. Whichever the route love's caravan shall take, that shall be the path of my faith. Thank you, everyone. I hope that kind of might be helpful in terms of arriving. Just welcome those who are joining us or who joined us during the meditation. Also wishing everyone who's celebrating the Jewish holidays, Shana Tova, a blessed year ahead and new beginnings, and wishing everyone well, and wishing all of you well, and all of us well, and all beings well. So, I want to share. Let me just pause here for a moment. I want to share some reflections, as I mentioned earlier, on the theme of loving kindness and the other heart practices of the Buddha. And as I mentioned, I want to just highlight some key elements of this practice, because it's a practice, or practices more accurately, that can be sometimes misunderstood. And I say that from experience, because when I first started practicing, when first started going to retreats over 30 years ago, I would go to retreats and they'd have a period most days where they do a loving kindness practice, and I didn't quite get it. It took me a long time to kind of get what this practice is about. There was a way in which it kind of felt like, oh, it's just words, like, oh yeah, may I be happy, blah, blah, and I thought I was supposed to feel things, something particular and stuff, and it took me a while, and other teachers and other practitioners talk about this as well, that it's not always the easiest practice to get into. I think mindfulness of like being aware of our experience, I think, oh yeah, I can get that. I'm supposed to be present here for whatever's arising. But the actual cultivation of the heart practices can be a little bit more, sometimes can be a little more difficult. And so I want to share a few reflections on that. And I also want to put it, these heart practices in the context of the time that we're living in now. And as I was thinking about this, talking today and kind of upcoming talks on the theme of the heart practices, I was thinking about our world today, and none of us know what's going to happen, and that's always the case. We don't know what the future is going to bring, but we can look at the world around us and probably agree about some general, you might say, general truths about the situation. And in a way, I'd kind of characterize things as like we're in a very, very challenging time, for humanity. The climate crisis is in many ways the kind of the immediate kind of edge of all of this, because it raises questions about whether, the survival of humanity and the survival of all of the other species that, we depend on each other, we're interconnected. There's a book that Elizabeth Colbert came out with in, I think, 2015, called The Sixth Extinction, talking about this time we're living in as, the sixth great, extinction of life forms on this planet. We know obviously about dinosaurs and other times if you study, going back hundreds of millions of years. But we're in a time where, experts, talk about this as a period of extinction. Not necessarily that humans will cease to exist. Obviously, sometime we will, but that we're in a very, very critical time, particularly around the carbon release into the atmosphere and the way it's changing the climate and the impacts of all of that on humans and on other species. I think the experts are saying that by the end of the 21st century, between 20 and 50% of all species will go extinct. 20 and 50%. this isn't going to be a talk about that, and there's time for those talks, but I just want to contextualize the loving kindness and other heart practices. I feel myself when I think about it, and others have kind of reflected in this way as well, that, the next great revolution for our species, if we are to survive, will need to come from a transformation of the human heart. There's much that's been done that's very wise and beneficial. That I think Steven Pinker is right that, even though it seems that violence is everywhere, we actually have moved in a direction where there's actually less, per capita, etc., than there was 300 years ago, 1,000 years ago, etc., etc. The better angels of our nature, and much has been done, much, wonderful benefits of technology, not least of which being together in the way that we're together today, and all of the wonderful benefits of being able to talk to our families across the world, if that's the case, and ways of being together and, joining with other people. Great things and great changes. Democracy, I think, is with all its limitations, is, I think, in a sense, in a political, social way, the kind of the best that we've come up with in terms of humans living together, and obviously very vulnerable as well. But we're living at a time, not just the climate crisis, but the other side, where divisions are incredibly deep. The conflict, the divisions, the wars, Ukraine right now, and the dictatorships around the world. There's been a movement towards, in recent years, towards more countries, rather than moving towards democracy, actually moving in a more authoritarian direction. And then talking about the growing inequality, the racism, the misogyny, sexism, homophobia, all the ways that we create separation and difference, how much suffering there is. And it's my belief, and again, I don't think I'm alone in this, that it won't be more technology or even better social organization, or more or different and new institutions that will bring about a real transformation that will lead to a potentially better future for all humans and other species. It won't so much come from that, but will have to come from an actual transformation of the human heart, the way we see each other, the way we live together on the earth, the way we, rather than coming from a place of separation, of division, of us and them, and I'm right, and I win, you lose, you win, I lose. That's kind of what the Buddha talked about as greed, aversion, and delusion, that kind of drive, to a significant extent, kind of drive, human behaviors, that we actually transform, as we do with the loving kindness practice of bringing the heart and bringing caring and compassion, kindness and friendliness into not just as a wish for ourselves and for others, but as an actual way of being in the world. This kind of movement, this aspiration was captured for me about 2,500 years ago. I was working in human rights in Washington in the late 90s, and some of you maybe remember there was a big campaign, not just here but worldwide, to ban landmines, to eradicate them from the earth. And I remember going along to a gathering, a activity calling for end to landmines outside of on the steps of the US Capitol. I believe it was 1998. And a teacher I studied with, Chris Titmus, I think, helped bring the great Cambodian leader Maha Ghosananda to speak, to Congress members and to public. He was just a little on him. He was you recall or know about the genocide in Cambodia with the Khmer Rouge and Pol Pot in the late 70s, and Mahagosananda was the monks and intellectuals and anybody who had educated as well as ordinary people were targeted by the Khmer Rouge. They killed 1.5 to 2 million people in the genocide there, and Mahagosananda, when the Khmer Rouge were forced out, he would organize walks throughout Cambodia, and it was still mined, and it was still very, very dangerous, and there were still the remnants of that genocidal regime there, and he, in a sense, kind of helped bring hope to the country after the genocide. And I remember what he said, and standing there, a small man, aging, in his Cambodian death, he said, before we eradicate the landmines from the soil, we first have to eradicate the landmines from our own hearts. Before we eradicate the landmines from the soil, we have to eradicate the landmines from our own hearts. And what he's saying is, we have to transform our own hearts, because the reason the landmines are in the ground are because of fear, aversion, craving, greed, all of these qualities that we've cultivated, enmity between us and others, these people, those people. If we don't get them, they'll get us, that mentality. We have to transform that whole way of being and way of seeing. I don't mean it just in a literal sense, we got to do this first and then that, because obviously we've got to do both. But from the Buddhist standpoint, the most important transformation will not be an institutional one or an organizing one. It will be the transformation of the human heart. And then it can engage with the institutional changes and the strategies and all of that we need to bring, and that are very, very important. But changing our hearts is really, really fundamental. And this is really in all of the great spiritual traditions. Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. And in Judaism, there's the tikkun olam, repair the world, respond to the suffering and the brokenness of the world, bring your heart into that, engaging with the brokenness, with the suffering. Martin Luther King and other civil rights leaders spoke about creating the beloved community, and the beloved community includes everybody, includes those people who we currently think of, those people who are doing that, I won't get into the details, but I think you know what I'm talking about, the us and them, that we all so easily get into. The Buddha put it in the Metta Sutta, the loving kindness, the discourse on loving kindness. May all beings be happy. Let no one deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none by anger or hatred wish harm to another. As a mother watches over her child, willing to risk her own life to protect her own only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, suffusing the whole world with unobstructed loving kindness. Suffusing the whole world with unobstructed loving kindness. This is the cultivation of these qualities of the heart, of loving kindness and compassion, joy, equanimity. The Bodhisattva Leonard Cohen put it this way. He said, "The heart has got to open in a fundamental way." If you remember that line. Democracy is coming to the USA. The heart has got to open in a fundamental way. And that kind of captures it for me, that this transformation of the heart. And I think what the Buddha's teachings offer in a somewhat unique way is the teachings offer ways of seeing that help free us from suffering. The Four Noble Truths and the foundations of mindfulness that can help us let go of suffering, can help us abandon greed and aversion and suspicion and cruelty and all of these qualities, and cultivate kindness and friendliness. And what I think is tremendously important, and probably why a lot of you and a lot of us are here today, the teachings offer practices. They offer modes or ways in which we can do this. It's one thing to say we should abandon clinging. If that was all, that's nice. I'd love to abandon clinging and craving. Who wouldn't, because they cause suffering. But how do you go about doing it? How do you do it, And that's what the teachings offer. There's a lot, as there's a lot of skillful means. That's the term that's used in Buddhism. The skillful means, if this doesn't work, then you can incline the mind in this direction. If you're practicing awareness, for example, and you find that things are really dry or you're getting judgmental about yourself, you can just invite in, for example, loving kindness to yourself or self-compassion. You can, the practices that we can, as the Buddha said, what you frequently think about and ponder on becomes the inclination of the mind. So learning how to incline the mind is such a fundamental part of these practices that we can see, does this lead to happiness or does this lead to happiness? If this leads to suffering, the Buddha says, don't go in that direction. Go in the direction that leads to happiness, that goes to freedom, towards freedom, to well-being. You may be familiar with the simile used in Buddhism of the two wings of the bird. You're familiar with the two wings of the bird? Just like the bird needs two wings to fly. So our practice requires two wings. What are the two wings? The two wings are the wing of wisdom and the wing of compassion. The wing of wisdom is awareness, it's investigation, it's insight, it's understanding. It's those practices that help us let go. But the other wing is the wing of compassion, the wing of the heart, of connection, of kindness, of caring, of compassion. So we need both of these wings to be able to really fly, to practice. Sri Nisargadatta, a great 20th century Indian spiritual teacher, said, "Wisdom tells me I'm nothing. Love tells me I'm everything. Between these two, my life flows." Wisdom tells me I'm nothing. Love tells me I'm everything. Between these two, my life flows. So we need the practices of awareness and insight that help us see clearly, that help us to see where we're suffering and to let go. But we also need the practices and the training to open our hearts, as we did in the meditation practice. To remember our oneness with all beings and with life. To remember the deepest truth of our interconnectedness with all beings, that we're not separate. Our suffering is the illusion of separation. How we get caught up in, I got to do this. And the illusion that I've got to do this on my own. And we forget our connection with all beings, not just human beings, but all of the species and all of life. You could say these two are two sides of the same coin, if you like. I'll mention the wonderful Indian teacher, Deepa Ma. She was a teacher of Sharon Salzberg, Jack Cornfield, Joseph Goldstein, a wonderful awakened woman. I think she was I never met her personally, but she died in 1989, lived much of the 20th century. But she had a very, very painful and difficult life, losing a husband and two of her young children, and deep, deep depression, but she practiced and really woke up and became a kind of a Buddhist saint, as someone's called her. But she was asked, there's a lovely book, I've mentioned this at other times, it's called Knee Deep in Grace. Knee Deep in Grace. And if you can, with my background, it's hard to see this. Knee Deep in Grace. By Amy Schmidt, The Extraordinary Life and Teaching of Deepa Ma. But she was once asked by teachers whether the person should be practicing mindfulness or loving kindness. And Deepa Ma answered, from my own experience, there's no difference between mindfulness and loving kindness. And Amy Schmidt, the writer, says, for her, love and awareness were one. Love and awareness were one. Think about it. When you're fully loving, aren't you also mindful? And when you're fully mindful, is this not also the essence of love? So at the deepest level, they're really one. They're really one. There's not a separation. But for most of us, we're still on that journey. So it helps to have the practices of mindfulness, the practices of insight, but also to have the practices of loving kindness and compassion and joy and these other heart practices. One of the central teachings and understandings that the Buddha taught was that our happiness isn't fundamentally determined by what happens to us or even to the conditions of our life, the events of our life, but is much more about how we meet our experiences, how we meet our experiences. You know, what Viktor Frankl talked about, you know, they could take everything from us, but the last of the human freedoms, the freedom to choose how we meet our experience, the freedom to respond and choose how we respond. And the Buddha's teachings of this, Sharon Salzberg put it really well. She said, love and concern for all are not things some of us are born with and others are not. Rather, there is the results of what we do with our minds. So love and caring and compassion are not about, you know, we're not born, oh, some people are just like this and some people are just born and they're horrible and they're mean, etc. It's really about what we cultivate, how we incline the mind. It's not to say that there isn't some baseline that we're working from. Yes, you know, and what comes down to us from, you know, certainly from our parents, etc. But it's really about how she says that they're the results of what we do with our minds. We can choose to transform our minds so that they embody love, or we can allow them to develop habits and false concepts of separation. So think about that. What are we cultivating? Are we cultivating love, kindness, compassion, caring? Or are we cultivating difference, division, separation, judgment, conflict? You know, how are we, each one of us, how are we inclining our mind? And to know, however that we are right now, that we can choose to incline the mind. We can cultivate kindness and friendliness. So this becomes, as the Buddha said, the inclination of our mind. After we practice enough, it just naturally comes that's what we embody in the world. That's how we express ourselves in the world. So the Buddha, you know, shared many practices, heart practices, but 4 of them, you know, he kind of elevated to particularly important qualities that we can cultivate. You would often call these heart practices. They have a name, a name in the Pali of Brahma Viharas. Brahma Viharas translates literally as Brahma being the divine or the gods, and Vihara being the word for a house or a home. So these qualities, loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity, we could talk about as The translation in English is often divine abodes. I think Sharon Salzberg uses the term our best home, our best home. They're beautiful qualities of heart and mind that if we really embody these qualities, we live a beautiful life. It's a beautiful life that we live when we embody these qualities. And just say a few words about these qualities. Loving kindness is really the broadest expression of these four qualities, the most inclusive. You could say loving kindness kind of includes all of the other qualities. Wishing well to all beings, ourselves, others, outward to all beings everywhere. And then the second quality is where that open-hearted quality meets particular conditions. And in this case of compassion, it's when the heart meets an open heart meets suffering, what naturally arises out of loving kindness, out of friendliness, is compassion. And compassion is empathy, and it's the wish to heal the suffering, the wish to minimize, alleviate, and end, if we can, the suffering. So compassion is that second expression of this open-hearted quality of friendliness and care. Sympathetic or appreciative joy is when somebody is doing really well. A loved one has, graduated from college or got married or had a child, or, we're happy in their happiness. And this is when the heart opens to the happiness of others. Often we're in a much more defended mode. We're in if they have something, I'll have less of it. It's this kind of, competitive scarcity model. But the wonderful thing about these practices is the more we practice, the more our hearts can open. They're spoken about as being immeasurable. They're called, another term for them is the four immeasurables, because there's no limit to the extent to which our heart can open. I often share that, we sometimes think of it, if we fill ourselves up with more loving kindness for this person and this person and this person, then there won't be any room. We'll overflow and we'll have loving kindness fatigue. People have probably heard the term compassion fatigue. I don't believe there's really anything such accurately called compassion fatigue, because if we get into fatigue, then we've fallen into something that isn't compassion anymore. It's fallen into something different. We've got caught up in some kind of aversion or some kind of fear or worry or aloneness, and then we're no longer expressing compassion. When we genuinely practice compassion and loving kindness and joy, there really is no limit, because the more we open, the more we have the capacity to open. But these qualities do have shadow sides, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that today, because we could have 20 talks or 50 talks on this. But some of the shadow sides is when these qualities turn into something, through lack of awareness, they turn into what is sometimes called the near enemy. So loving kindness can actually kind of turn into a kind of craving, or attachment. If we're not really stay in the place of really open-hearted loving kindness. Compassion could turn into pity without awareness. Rather than keeping our hearts open to the people of Morocco or Libya or people that are suffering anywhere in our own communities, that we think of, oh, I'm up here and you're down there. And then it becomes pity, and it's no longer compassion. It's no longer genuine compassion. We have to bring awareness back, to invite ourselves back to genuine compassion. So not the problem when the mind goes that direction. We have to see it and then incline the mind back. And then the final quality is equanimity. This is the steadiness, the groundedness, the balance that allows us to hold all experiences. I'm noticing the time, and I want to just finish up and have Emily lead us in some movement. But what I want to do, and continue this the next time, but what I want to share about these practices, coming back to my original point, that people often find these practices challenging at first, and there are certain confusions we can have about the practice is to emphasize a couple of things, and I'll do that to finish off today. And what I want to share is that fundamentally is that these practices aren't about a particular formula. They're not about particular words. They're not even about particular feelings. I'm supposed to feel something. I'm supposed to feel kind. I'm supposed to feel connected with others. Sometimes what they bring up is the exact opposite. We get angry. We get pissed off. We're annoyed. Oh, I don't like this. Oh, I don't like these words. We sometimes react to it, and that's fine. There's a teacher, I remember listening to a talk. He says sometimes metta, loving kindness, is like a magnet for afflictive states. So rather than the heart opening, it actually kind of pulls towards it annoyance, frustration, anger, the actual opposite of these qualities. And that's fine because they need to be brought into awareness. But what's important is the inclination, is the commitment, is the intention. So I would just want to share that Gil Fronsdal, just the term, I think it's a helpful one. He says, he calls these four qualities four faces of love. Four faces of love. So it's this basically the same face, but when it changes to respond to different conditions, to suffering or to joy or to disconnection, we can cultivate the different qualities. So the most important thing to emphasize, I want to just name two books that I find absolutely central in the practice of these heart qualities. One is Sharon Salzberg's book that came out in the mid-1990s, and it's still as fresh as ever, called Loving Kindness, The Revolutionary Art of Happiness. A fantastic book, wonderful book on loving kindness. And the other book is Christina Feldman, who teaches around the world, but she's based in Devon in the UK. Wonderful teacher, been teaching since the early 70s, mid-70s. Christina Feldman. Her book is called Boundless Heart, the Buddha's Path of Kindness, Compassion, Joy, and Equanimity. I want to finish off just by sharing some really, I think, wonderful quotes from that get across this idea of these practices of not about formulas, not about particular ways of doing it, but about cultivating these intentions, these commitments. One way that Christina Feldman puts it in Boundless Heart, she says, we're learning to widen our circle of concern and care to embrace all beings. So we're widening our capacity to embrace all beings, not just all beings, but also all experiences that she also stresses. She says, metta, loving kindness, is not primarily concerned with how we feel, but with, she says, the attitudinal commitment and intention we bring to all moments of experience. We stand next to all events and people and befriend them. So this is the quality we really want to get across, is like this quality of befriending all people. All people, and I think this is a dimension that Christina brings in a kind of, and maybe not quite unique, but a very, very important way. Not just people, or not just people and other species, but to all experiences. So think about bringing metta, loving kindness, or compassion to your own anger, or your own fear, or your own anxiety. Just as you would send metta, loving kindness, to yourself or to others who are experiencing suffering, consciously bring loving kindness to that experience, so that it's not a problem that this experience is manifesting, but you can hold it with kindness and with friendliness, with care. Another teacher on the West Coast, on the West Coast, Shaila Catherine, she says, metta is a quality of heart that embraces life without conflict, a deep friendship with life, an unconflicted relationship to all things and all beings, an unconflicted relationship to all things and all beings. So she also says, sometimes we may not feel warm-hearted, yet with deep commitment to non-hatred and to care for all beings, we express loving kindness and the intention of goodwill in challenging circumstances. So just a final quote from Christina Feldman. Metta practice is always a simple invitation and a conscious cultivation of intention and inclining our hearts towards kindness. Inclining our hearts towards kindness. So I just want to finish up with that kind of reflection. Much, much more to be said about these practices. But just if I can get across that main theme of it's really about cultivating the intention, the commitment, the inclination of friendliness, of kindness, of care to ourselves, to others, to all beings, and to all experiences. Can we bring this quality of heart to all beings and all experiences of our life? And it's a practice, it's a training. You know, the more we train the heart, the more these arise naturally. Thank you for your kind attention. And I want to pass it over to Emily. Thank you, Emily. And we'll have some mindful movement, come back and close up for the day. Thank you.
Thank you for those inspiring words. Let me invite you to just shift your weight. Rise up or stay, whatever you wish, and shift your weight from side to side. Just feeling the way you're grounded with your feet. And then open up into the space around you, embracing this moment with attention and awareness. Taking a look just around you. Finding your mind inclined to kindness to yourself. And then open up wide and raising your arms up. Exhale, soften your shoulders and elbows and grasp your left wrist and tilt. Lengthening that left side and bending over to the right. You can always lift a little to reset and let go again. Inhale up. Switch wrists, extending over to the left, breathing into the right rib cage, and then softening again. Softening that left shoulder. Inhale up. Float your arms down, roll your shoulders together, noticing how this joint moves, the shoulders, and roll them the other way, loving your shoulders for what they give you. Now draw your arms up into cactus arms. Exhale, float the arms down. Inhale, rise. Exhale, floating down. Inhale, rising up. Extending your arms out. Flip the left palm up. Take a look. And on an inhale, switch to the other side. Palm up on the right. Back to the left. Flipping the right palm around. Back to the right. Lifting that up. Last time to the left, to the right. Float your arms down, roll your shoulders independently. And roll them the other way. Now draw your hands behind your waist and finding your feet. Inhale, lifting your chest, your head. Exhale, drawing your arms down, gathering your shoulder blades together. And back to your waist, drop your head down, lengthening the cervical spine. Inhale, lifting up, dropping your hands down, and release. Float your arms up and just fly. Doing your own dance for just a moment. Swinging however you wish to move. And now place your hands above your knees, bending at the hip crease, extending your hips just a bit beyond your heels, and then lower down. Lengthening your neck, dropping your shoulders, allowing your hands to move along your legs and even drop down. Pressing on your feet to sustain this pose. The interaction between your pelvis and the length of your spine. Breathing in. Exhale, releasing. And then place your hands above your knees, tuck your tailbone under, start to stack your vertebrae, rising up, drawing your shoulders around your ears. And just come into your mountain pose feeling, your embodiment. Noticing how your breath moves, how you feel with love. And then drawing your arms up, place your palms together and draw them to your heart and take a bow. Thank you for your practice.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Emily. As always, thank you. Deep bow, appreciation. Thank you. And thank you, everyone. I want to just share a couple of, we have some announcements in a little bit. I want to share that I have coming up, beginning in 2 days, actually Tuesday, I have a 6-week course called Freeing the Heart. And I haven't done this course before, but it includes things that I have done many times over the years. And what I'm wanting to do with this course is to take the central teachings of the Buddha, and 3 of the most important teachings, the 4 Noble Truths, suffering and the end of suffering, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the practices that help us let go, what the Buddha called the direct path to liberation, and these heart practices. And I want to take from all of those what I think are the keys to freeing the heart, keys to letting go and connecting with all of life. And so it's kind of like looking a little bit from these teachings from 10,000 feet as opposed to from 10 feet or, from the weeds, so less of that, and just how they all fit together and how they help us untangle ourselves from suffering and free the heart. Anyway, it's 6 Tuesday evenings. It's online. It's 7:15 to 9 on Eastern time. So check it out. I think it'll be... you just go to the IMCW website, or maybe it'll be shared here if we can get it up there. But I hope you can join us. We should have a good group for that. And I mentioned too, I've got a day-long coming up in person. We haven't decided yet if we can do it in a hybrid way, but but we have to check on that. But it's October 21st. That Rebecca and I are teaching together at Iona in Tenley Town. So just kind of keep that in mind if you feel like getting together with folks and practicing together. And anyone's interested, we've got a retreat in Ireland this coming summer. I'll just share my email there so that you can, if you have any questions, you can let me know. Finally, I just mentioned that we, again, Rebecca and I are teaching that. We were there just, I think not before the pandemic. No, we were there in 2021 and had a wonderful time, and seeing places on the west of Ireland and also practicing meditation together. So anyway, if you're interested, let me know. And then finally, I just mentioned that there's no cost for these classes. They're offered freely. You are invited, if you're able and if you're inclined to do so, to make a donation. It's called dana in the Pali language. It's how the teachings have come down through 2,500 years to today, and the way they have in helping us